our jack is making a really wicked noise, and I'll post that video for you right here. Okay, so we're going to be taking this jack off of this tongue, and in order to do that, we're going to need some tools. So we're going to cover that right now. So let's go over what we're going to be using today. In order to take the jack apart and take the jack off the tongue of the trailer, you're going to need some tools. You're going to need a 19mm socket to be able to get up underneath there to get the foot off. Make sure you get that off first, because once you unbolt the jack, you're not going to be able to hold it and control it. So recommend taking that off first. You're also going to need a 4mm Allen wrench or hex wrench to take the control motor off, and you're going to need a 14mm to take the 3 bolts off that hold the jack to the tongue. Universal is recommended, not required. Might make it easier for you. You're also going to need some grease. I'm just using a Mollygraph grease that I have. Good multi-purpose grease. They recommend something that can withstand high temperatures. This should fit the bill just fine. You're also going to need a few zip ties. These are 10-inch zip ties. You'll need them to re-secure the wire that connects the motor to the battery itself. You do not have to disconnect the wire. You just have to set the head off to the side, the motor itself off to the side, while you're removing and replacing the jack shaft itself. Okay, so as you can tell, I've got the trailer hooked up to the truck. When you're ever going to do a job like this, please take every safety precaution that you can. The trailer's jacked up and put on the truck. The truck has got the parking brake on. I've got chocks under the tires. Nothing's going to move. Make sure you're being safe and using every precaution that you can. I reached out to the company that makes this jack, which is Barker, and they said that there's something going on inside the shaft here. So we are going to take this thing apart today and get the control head off, set it off to the side, remove it from the tongue, put the new one on, and go through that whole procedure with you. So you may have noticed I have a couple of extra brackets. That's for my flag. I have a video on that as well. Also, we're going to have to remove our propane cover. Propane tanks can stay in place. So I'm going to go ahead, take these off, get the propane cover out of the way, and come back and get started. One thing I might not have mentioned is you're going to need some way to cut these zip ties off. Let's go ahead and get started by cutting these off. We'll get that foot off the bottom there. There's 3 zip ties on here. One, two, 3. This is the wire I was telling you about. You're going to move this out of the way. You have 3 4mm hex head bolts that got to come out to remove this. They don't have to come out all the way, just a little bit. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to get this off. Okay, so under here we have the jack foot. I do have a snap pad on here. Conveniently, it's got a hole in the bottom, so we don't have to worry about taking that snap pad off. We're going to go ahead and get this busted loose. There you go, short little bolt, lock washer. There's the snap pad and the jack foot. I'm just going to set these off to the side because they're going to be going right back on. Everything looks good under here. Okay, so we have 3 14mm bolts that hold the jack to the tongue itself. My brake controller, brake controller is right here. It is actually bolted to one of them, so that's going to come out. I've got everything moved out of the way, including my wire for the motor, and we're going to start breaking these loose. Now, my ratchet and everything does fit in here without the universal. However, it is very snug. So I'm going to go ahead and use the universal because I have one. Wow, these are really tight. Because I have one, and to speed things along, I'm going to use an impact driver. Now, I don't recommend this for putting them in swinging them down because you don't want to cross thread anything. And I am going to break them free with the ratchet and then use that just to make sure everything is going as it should. I don't want to have anything cross threaded. Have to come back and fix something later. Okay, so those are all loose. Let's get them loose. Gotta love power tools. So here's the bolts that came out of there. They're in pretty good shape, but they do have some rust on them. I'm going to clean them off. This one's pretty good. I'm going to clean them off with a little bit of wire brush, and I'm going to put a little bit of never sees on these before I put them back in. So here's where that 4mm hex wrench comes back in to play. There's 3. There's 1 on each side, and then there's 1 in the back. Which is the tightest one. Okay, those are loose and it's ready to lift off. I'm going to gently lift this off, make sure I'm not damaging my cables. And if you look inside there, you can see that's what makes it all work. The motor drives that cog grabs the gear and spins around. There's some grease in there. I'm going to clean that grease out and replace it with grease of my own. And here's the jack itself coming out. Again, I'll show you the top here. Rest this on there. And you can see the grease, that's what it grabs. The grease in there. This one's not working very well, so I'm going to be taking this whole thing and just putting it away because it still works. I guess I could use it as a backup, but that sound that it makes, pretty bad. Okay, so here's the new unit. I didn't take it out of the box for you because I don't do unboxings. Exactly the same as what came out. I did check it to make sure before I did this, and as you can see, there is no grease inside there, so I'm going to go ahead and grease that up with the grease that I have. I did check with them. That grease should be fine. Everything else is good. I'm going to put a little bit down here in the bottom as well, just to use as never sees, so we can get that bolt back out of there should we have to do it again. That thing was really in there tight. All right, so we're going to reverse the process, put this thing on. So I'm going to go ahead and clean the old grease out of here because I don't like to mix grease. Just something my dad taught me. But if you want to get grease off, one of the best ways to do it is with WD-40. Works great as a degreaser and cleans and lubricates. So we're just going to put a little bit of this in here, and then we're just going to wipe it out. And it's as simple as that. I'm going to go ahead and not bore you with the details. Okay, so as you can see, it's cleaned out really nice in there. I'm just going to put a little grease right on top of that gear. I'm not going to go crazy because I don't think it really needs that much. And again, I'm just using a Molly grease. Got a little bit of everything in it, little dinosaurs and stuff like that that you need. A couple of quick pumps should do it. Maybe one more. All right, I think that looks good. So here's the new jack. This isn't greased either, so we're going to put a little bit in here as well. I think I'll just set that right there and just squirt it in. That ought to be more than adequate. All right. So that's what we're working with. So we're going to repeat the process in reverse. And first thing we're going to do is clean this up down here a little bit because it's pretty dirty. So here's the replacement jack stand. We're going to go ahead and drop it in. We're going to line it up down there. Make sure that's where it should be. All right. Those holes all lined up nice. Looks like it should go right on. I did clean up my hardware, And I don't know if it's going to show up on camera, but I did put a very, very thin coating of Never Sees on there because I don't want them to be a problem in the future. Interesting enough, I just noticed these holes don't line up. So we may have to address that before we move forward. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So here, we're lined up here. We're lined up on this other side. This hole is not lined up. So I'm going to spin this thing around a couple times and see if I can figure out what's going on. Okay, so crisis averted. These holes have to go on a certain way. I spun this thing around a few times. I had the labels in the front. They didn't line up, so I kept spinning it. Spun it to here. They didn't line up, so I went one more time. And sure enough, they line up pretty much perfectly right there. So that's how it's going on. So if you're doing this job yourself, make sure before you start drilling and filing out holes that you spin this thing around a couple times. Make sure you don't get the proper alignment just by readjusting it. So I'm going to start putting my hardware back in. Again, since I have it, I'm going to use it. I did ask about torque specs on this, and I was told as tight as you can get it. So that's what I'm going with. So we're just going to throw a couple of good ugga-duggas on here and call it good. And that is tight.
Some of you may have noticed that I didn't put my breakaway brake controller on when I was putting the jack on. So I did it after the fact. Fortunately, my mic was turned off when I was recording this, so I had to do a voiceover.
Quick reminder, if you're working out in the sun like I am, make sure you're staying hydrated. Especially in South Florida. The sun is no joke. We're ready to put the motor back on the shaft here. So all you do, pick it up, slide it on. We have to rotate it around a little bit to get those teeth to grab in. Got pretty lucky, it dropped right on. And we're going to start snugging these down. I'm going to leave it straight like it was. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and get it about where it was. It was right about there, pretty straight. And then we're going to tighten these up. I'm going to go reconnect the battery because I did disconnect this just as a safety precaution. What we got going on here. It is working nice and smooth up and down. How about that? Okay, so we're going to zip tie this back on, button a few more things up, put that foot on, and we're going to call this job done. Okay, we're going to run this thing up and down, hook to the truck, see if it makes that noise again. So far, we're working great. No problems at all. That's exactly what I expect it to sound like. Again, going down, no problem, smooth as silk. All the right noises. Okay, so this job's done. These jacks are really very sound. They do occasionally have a problem like this. I did reach out to Barker, and they did cover this shaft under warranty. They sent it to me. They were really wonderful to work with over the phone. I'm not sponsored by them, but they did send this to me. And the other one was working. It was just very noisy. I don't know what's wrong with it. I've heard other people have that problem as well. But this is a fairly easy job. You can tackle it in about an hour or so. Not too bad. Just take your time. Make sure you're following all your safety protocols, chalking your trailer, chalking your truck, etc. And like I said, I disconnected the power. Don't know if I really needed to, because you never really take the power head off. I also had a question about this cable, one of my other videos. We have a DC to DC charger. That's what that cable's for. Those things are great too. Maybe I'll shoot a video on that one day. Anyway, really appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching. Remember, it's all about the journey. Stay safe out there, and God bless.